It is my absolute pleasure to be with you here today and for the next 3 days to teach you the dynamic neuroretraining system. As you know, this workshop is about neuroplasticity and the brain's innate ability to change and heal itself. And you've already heard a lot about neuroplasticity already. You've heard me speaking personally to you about neuroplasticity. You've also seen a lot about neuroplasticity, or you've read a lot about it already, even through the book, The Brain That Changes Itself by Dr. Norman Doidge. And I'm sure that you've even looked perhaps at TV shows that deal with neuroplasticity, and you've seen that. And now you're going to get the opportunity to actually experience that in your own life and how it applies to limbic system impairments. And limbic system impairments could be chronic fatigue syndrome, it might be chemical sensitivities, it could be anxiety, it could be chronic pain, and it could be depression or post-traumatic stress disorder, or a variety of other manifestations of limbic system impairment. So throughout this workshop, you are going to hear me talk a lot about the principles of neuroplasticity, of focus, of association, and of repetition. You're also going to see for yourself what the practical application of that is in life. And then you're going to get to experience that for yourself on a really, really profound and transformative level. And today is the first day of the next 6 months of your life. And as you all know, this commitment takes practice. I've asked you all for your commitment ahead of time that you will practice for an hour a day for 6 months. And that's partially because one of the keys to creating permanent neuroplastic pathways is repetition. So I want you to all really know that this is the beginning of 6 months of exercise for you. And in a new way, it's exercise for your brain, and specifically exercise for your limbic system. So there are 2 ways that we create new synapses in our brain, 2 ways in which we promote neuroplasticity. One is when we learn new things, and the other is when we have new experiences. And you're going to do a lot of that over the next 3 days. So I'm going to teach you new information about neuroplasticity as it relates to your limbic system. And I'm going to show you how to implement that knowledge in a practical way so that you have a personal experience of what that feels like in your body. And I have to tell you, this is a completely new paradigm in healing and a completely new paradigm in health. I have worked with so many people, with hundreds of people now, who have been suffering from chronic illnesses, sometimes for decades. And sometimes within 3 or 4 days, or even earlier, have been able to eliminate symptoms of illness or substantially decrease their symptoms of illness. And that's just the very beginning. And sometimes it takes a little bit longer than that. But what I ask of you is to give this a full 6 months, because you are in training now. You are in neuroplasticity boot camp. So for the next 3 days, we're really gonna give it all that we've got. And as a result of that, you're gonna see some pretty fantastic results. And I actually have a guest speaker that I've invited to come and talk this morning. And this speaker happens to hold a very special place in my heart, because when I was sick with chemical sensitivities, he was one of my lifelines and one of the people that really gave me support when I was ill and kind of pointed me in a direction of how to cope, or gave me ideas at the time that were actually life-saving in that moment, even just to know someone else who was struggling with that kind of illness. So And I guess I can share with you too that at one point, which I'll go over later in the workshop when I tell you about myself more, is that at one point I became homeless as a result of of the sensitivities that I had at the time. And I had to camp because that was the only way that I knew how to survive. And I couldn't just have any tent. I had to have a tent that was off-gassed enough for me to actually be in it. So I phoned a friend and I said, I don't know what to do. Do you have some ideas? And he said, borrow my tent. And take it. Take it for as long as you need it. So I did. And we'll get into more of that story in a minute, but this is the man that I borrowed the tent from. And this is also a person that took the workshop just last weekend. So it's my honor for this to come full circle where I can give back to the people who have given so much to me. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my really good friend, Bill. Come on up, Bill. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a background in science, and this is, I had started with multiple chemical sensitivity, and that got worse and worse and worse, and so I was suffering from chronic fatigue. I had this growing number of allergies, which got worse and worse. I was at the point where I woke up every morning and I was sick. I was nauseated, so I spent the first half of every day in this horrible state. And I was in chronic pain all the time. I tried a whole bunch of things, starting with the standard medical approach to it, which was not really helpful. I'm sure most of you, if you're here, you've probably been that route yourself. As I said, I'm a scientist. So I was I've always been skeptical about the crystals and the good vibes sort of version of what they call holism, even though I'm a holistic anthropologist. We use the word holistic with a different meaning, a very precise meaning sort of integrative, putting all the pieces together rather than taking things apart and looking at each little bit in detail. We want to take what other people have done and put them together and make a coherent whole out of them. And one of the holes in anthropological theory is, how does culture work? Well, there it is. Annie's put it together, this little piece, which I can remap into the terminology of anthropology. And I would initially call this something like de-enculturation with re-enculturation. This is the unconscious operation of the mind, which allows you to operate without thinking about things, unconsciously. You don't have to think about how you calculate your kinship system when you react to somebody who's violated it. Okay, it's just an automatic response. It's like learning how to walk or learning how to dance. But you learn how to dance. Once you've learned during the dance, it's difficult to go back and deconstruct all the movements that your body does in order to teach it to somebody else. Right? So part of what Annie's doing is doing that stuff. So for me, it's rather an exciting new development. So I came here with that in mind and joined 9 other people who looked, if anything, maybe a little bit more miserable than me. I wasn't. I was still pretty skeptical, but by the end of the first day, everybody was laughing. People had transformed, the looks on their faces was transformed. I get goosebumps just thinking about it. And I went home and practiced what Annie had taught me, did my routines, and I started to feel really good. In fact, I had a whole bunch of energy that I didn't have before. Came back for the second day, and I was sitting with one of my new friends out in the sun because it was a bit chilly. And he also had the same sorts of ailments as I had, and we were studiously not talking about that. We were talking about other things. And from behind us came this pack of young people, all wearing the current perfumes, deodorants, whatever that is, which would normally have made me really sick instantly for 4 days. That was the old routine. And I dodged it. Nothing happened. I dodged it. I still remember the reaction I used to have, but I was able to dodge that initial reaction and it's gone. And this week, I have, for the first time, left my house without my mask, my respirator, which I have had on my face every time I went out the door for the last 4 years. And I got on my bicycle and rode around the neighborhood. For the first day that I did that, I was riding through the exhausted dryer vents, which used to really make me sick, and I was able to dodge it and continue. And I had the strength, and I didn't suffer that catastrophic loss of strength that I used to have after doing physical exertion. And I'm moving. The next day, and this is significant, 2 days in a row I exercised. I got on my bike and I was on my bike for a full hour, maybe more than an hour. And although I was aware of all these old triggers, I was able to dodge them one by one. And yesterday, we had made an appointment to go to the bank and renegotiate mortgages and things like that. And I actually went into the bank without my respirator on. And there's one woman who in the last few years has been dealing with us every time we come in. She recognizes, the freak in the mask and his husband. And she did a double take when we came in and focused in on me and said, "I've never seen your face." And so that's really quite significant. And we sat in there and we talked about mortgage rates, percentages, years, salaries, all the stuff you have to do when you're in a bank. And it's numbers, numbers, numbers. And numbers have been sort of a challenge for me over the last few years because my brain hasn't been operating at full capacity. And there was nothing. I was fine. I was following. We were continuing our conversation. There were smells. Clients came in with their smells and left their smells there. But I was able to dodge the reaction. And then we went from there to the greengrocer and various people in there who know us well. It's a comfortable place for me to shop. Immediately made a beeline to me and wanted to talk about my symptoms, wanted to know what I was doing, why I was in there without my mask, was it all over, etc. So I just wanted to encourage you that even though this seems like an unlikely thing to do, and he's going to have you doing a whole bunch of silly things in public, it's going to be fun. Once you give up the notion that, I don't want to play that, it's going to be fun, and it'll have a positive effect that it'll be sort of like a surprise. Well, it's only been a week. I live with my husband and our best friend. And the two of them are both markedly happier being around me. I have this Cheshire grin on my face most of the time, which wasn't there last week. They're happier. Even my cat has been spending an awful lot more time on my lap, purring up a storm. So everybody around me is happy. The people in the shops that we frequent are happy to see my face again. I feel happy, and I'm starting to plan things like the future, because it used to be we could plan a dinner party, we could get all the food ready, I could do all the cooking, but I couldn't guarantee that I would be there, because if one of my friends came to the door wearing something I reacted to, I was gone for the next 4 days, and my husband and our friend would be putting on the dinner party instead. I'd be in the back room with a face cloth over my head, trying not to think about the fact that I wasn't at the party, and feeling like a nuisance. But now I can think about the future. And that's got its own little scary details. I've sort of lost my career, I've lost all sorts of things, but I've got a whole new set of new possibilities, which are opening up as a result of having my life back, feeling alive again. recognize that you have this inner strength and stick with it, because when Annie talks about practice, she really means it. It's important.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you. Let's give Bill a round of
Good luck,
applause.
all of you.